Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks Podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 9, featuring the top 5 High-Concept Voyager episodes. Star Trek fans, welcome. Astonishment to have you with us. Thank you. I am your host, Jim Moorhouse. Okay, not sure if that translated to audio, but hopefully you pictured me contorting my body and flailing my arms around as I practiced my tac language there for our first ever Voyager episode. I love it. It's exclusive Voyager on TrekRanks tonight, and I love Voyager. I love all Trek. I am Jim Moorhouse, and as always, I am happy to be joined this evening by Jeff Hulit, the Federation trader who, long ago, he started the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. He was a Maquis renegade, and he eventually worked his way back into our good graces. Jeff, are you there?
So glad to be back in your good graces, Mr. Moorhouse. Thank you, as always.
That is great to have you here. Also joining us tonight, we have two special guests. First up, right here in the LA sector, Sector 001, as we like to call it, Adam Hunault, an awesome Trekspert who actually is not making his TrekRanks debut tonight because he was here we did a live recording of our top 5 food moments, and Adam was with us, and he chimed in from the observation deck when Adam Drozen, who was the guest host that night, we got stuck on a trivia question. And this man knows his Trek. So, Adam, are you there, buddy?
It's true. I just couldn't contain myself.
Yeah, he's chimed in. He's like, no, it was breaking the ice. And we're like, oh, yeah, that's right. Good call. All right, and we also have...
Well, thanks for inviting me back after that terrible first performance.
No, it was awesome, and we look forward to your expertise tonight. We also have joining us all the way from the Necrid Expanse in the Saskatchewan corridor, Mr. Mutala Nebula himself, the prolific Trek FM podcaster, Brandon-Shea. Mutala, welcome, B-Shea. How are you, buddy?
There's Tim Hortons in that nebula.
Oh, that is quite appropriate for a Voyager episode. I love it. All right, so we're gonna get into the topic tonight and get rolling on these high-concept Voyager episodes, which really could mean anything. But before we do, I want to talk to you guys quick about your Trek origin story. It's always one of my favorite things to hear. So, Adam, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of how you got into Trek?
Well, I would love to, except I can't even remember. My earliest memory of watching Star Trek was I was probably 2 or 3 years old. My father was watching it. I was watching along with him. And there was a scene where the Enterprise, original Star Trek rerun, the Enterprise was accelerating out of control. And it's the first thing I remember about Star Trek. And later on, I went back and I filled in all of the Star Trek episodes. And in those days, you had to watch them on reruns.
on TV.
And I never saw this scene again. And I thought I imagined it. And I got to the very, very last one, That Which Survives. Last one that I could see, and there it was. So it turns out the last Star Trek episode I managed to watch from the original series was also the first.
That is awesome. And when was that? And you just kind of took off from there with Next Gen?
Yeah, I think that would have been probably around 1985. And I remember in 86 begging my dad to take me to see The Voyage Home. He wisely didn't because I was only 4. And I was watching the first night for Star Trek The Next Generation for Encounter at Farpoint, and I still have it on videotape.
Oh, that is awesome. All right, how about you, B-Shea? How long have you been into Trek?
Well, I've really been into Trek since, I guess it was December of 92. What really got me into it, I stayed home sick from school one day and watched Shore Leave. Nice. And it really hooked me right from that episode. But the first episode really that hooked me for Next Generation, I was actually that same week, and I watched Chain of Command Part 1 live. and was really hooked right from that point on. And it was a perfect time to get involved into Star Trek, and because Deep Space Nine was coming out right away, and within a year we had another movie coming out, and we had Voyager starting, and so it was really right on the start of this big crescendo, this big wave that was coming along. But I actually do remember that my mom sat us down to watch Encounter at Farpoint when it first aired, and I had enough of a knowledge of Star Trek at the time. I guess I would have been 6 at the time, and I had enough knowledge that I was asking, like, is that supposed to be Kirk? Is that supposed to be Data? Or sorry, is that supposed to be Spock or whatever? And but I don't know. I know that we watched it, but it never really stuck with me until I was in my 12 years old area, 11 years old.
Yeah, that early 90s, that was the sweet spot where there was so much Trek, and really what I always say is the Trek expanded universe was actually happening back then. Yeah. It's pretty amazing with the crossovers. All right, before we get rolling tonight, a quick programming alert. If you were paying attention to the end of our last episode, we actually previewed that we were going to be doing the top 5 Voyager sick burns today, and that was an idea that Adam had suggested, and we loved it. But as we started digging into it, we kind of were realizing it maybe not translating as well to an in-depth conversation. So we decided instead to switch it up to the top 5 high-concept Voyager episodes. So before we get into it, I want to take a couple of minutes and quickly talk some Voyager sick burns, because I did do some research and we had a couple that were fun. So Adam, did you have any you wanted to drop?
I had one I wanted to drop, and it's from the episode Mortal Coil. And it is 7 of 9's take on the Kazon. She says, their biological and technological distinctiveness was unremarkable. They were unworthy of assimilation.
Yes.
And then later goes on to say, why assimilate a species that would detract from perfection?
There are so many. So I don't know, Brandon, did you look any up? We know we talked about it before.
I did. I've got one here, and it's my favorite one, and probably my favorite sick burn in Star Trek, and it's probably an obvious one, but season 4, episode 7, Scientific Method. Shall I flog them as well?
Yes.
And, just seeing Janeway's reaction, she knows as soon as he says that, she knows that she's way out of line. And it's such a perfect line from him, and it's delivered so dryly that it just makes me laugh every time I hear it. I love it.
Yeah, I do love that moment. How about you?
Sarcastic Tuvok is the best Tuvok.
Yeah, you could literally do the whole list as just Tuvok. It was actually hard to kind of get your head around thinking about it. So one that jumped out at me was, I had a few written down, was I love it because it was a very James Bond style put down at the end of Night when Janeway's fed up with those Malon a-holes and she just proclaims, time to take out the garbage. Love that sick burn. And then I had 2 from Tuvok, which was, one was in, let's just play them for you.
I can tell by the expression on your face that you've got some bad news.
I have no expression on my face. However, you are correct.
How do you propose to defeat Chaotica?
Well, he's been attacking the aliens with his death ray.
It's a shame we don't have one.
Literally, I could do just Tuvok sick burns all day. I love when he says to Paris, it's a shame we don't have one. All right, so that's just a quick Voyager sick burn catch up. So before we get into our diagnostic cycle, let's do just a real fast TrekRanks reset. Just to remind everybody that our general order number 1 here at the TrekRanks Podcast is, just in case it's the first time you're listening, that we like to talk about Star Trek here. That's all we do. We use rankings as our crutch just to have, a fun conversation about Trek and maybe do a deep dive on a specific topic or episode or idea, and just see where it takes us and maybe talk about elements of Trek in a way that you haven't thought of before. So that's our goal. And of course, our main driver for that discussion is
infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
Or in other words, Vulcan Master and young angry Tuvok. Our mantra at TrekRanks is no wrong answers. So this show is all about the reasons we love Star Trek. And, we're not going to nitpick the things that we don't like. That's not what we do. You can get that elsewhere. So we love it all. We love the original series, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, the Kelvin timeline, and Voyager, which we'll be talking about tonight. Jeff, Adam, B-Shea, that all makes sense?
You betcha.
You're here.
Yes, exactly. All right, Jeff, so before we dive into some of those big Voyager ideas, can you please make sure the long-range transceiver array is fired up so our listeners can transmit their incoming messages?
Hailing frequencies are open.
Sure thing, Jim. So if you're looking to connect with us online, you can find us at the tricordertransmissions.com or trekranks.com. We're also on Twitter at TrekRanks and at Tricorder Show, and you can leave us a voicemail. We'll give you this number again at the end of the show at 609-512-LLAP. Back to you, Jim.
Awesome. And if you check us out at TrekRanks page at the tricordertransmissions.com, we have a running total there of some of the statistics of, so you can just kind of see what kind of love each series and each topic has been getting. So that's been fun. All right, and I'm at Enterprise Extra and at TrekRanks, so that's, you know where to find me. Send in your list because we love to hear from you. And Adam and B-Shea, tell everybody kind of how they can get a hold of you. Adam?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Adam Hunault. My last name is spelled Hunault. It's got a lot of silent letters in it, but that's where you'll find me.
And you can find me on Twitter at Brandon-Mutala. That's Mutala. And if you want to follow me on my Alfred Hitchcock Twitter account, we have another podcast called Good Evening, and you can follow that at Good Evening Pod.
I don't think I knew that. I would have looked for that. That's awesome. Love me some Alfred. Is that mostly the TV show?
No, actually, we're going through his films. We started with the silent ones, and after this episode airs, the next episode that's going to air, we're actually going to cover season 1 of Bates Motel. So we're going to stagger that throughout. But we've done an interview with, I did an interview with Chris Bacon, who composed the music for Bates Motel. So we're kind of going all over the place, but we're going to go through his movies chronologically, starting with the silent ones.
I love Alfred Hitchcock. I love Psycho. I love what Bates Motel did. That was a phenomenal series.
And Roxanne Dawson directed a bunch of them.
Yes, a whole bunch. Every time she directed, I'd be like, yeah, she did my episode. And my wife would get really sick of that. Okay, so I think we're now ready to move over to the Delta Quadrant and get into the topic for tonight's episode.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
All right, our top 5 high-concept Voyager episodes. It's our first deep dive into Voyager. So let's do this. Let's start with our Prime Directive here, with our diagnostic cycle. So without getting into our Prime Directives, I want to kind of hear from you guys on how you define high concept. What does that mean to you? So Adam, why don't you get us started there?
Okay, well, first of all, I think there's a couple ways to define it, but the way I always think about it is high concept versus low concept. And high concept is something with where the concept is really the center of the entire thing. It can classically be explained to somebody else in an elevator, and it usually would be you could get the sense of it from one sentence, and that sentence would start with "what if." So low concept, on the other hand, has more to do with the characters in it. So I like to think of it as high concept is the inner light. You know, what if Picard lived another life of an alien man? And low concept is lessons. Picard falling in love isn't a particularly fascinating concept. It's just what you do with it and what the characters do in the situation that makes it a good story.
All right. That is a awesome way to look at it. It'll be a little different. I'm now trying to apply my picks to that and see if it'll match up. We'll find out. How about you, B-Shea? Any thoughts on kind of how you would define high concept?
I think mine would kind of follow along what Adam was saying there. But for me, high concept is, in a nutshell, to me, it needs to stand out and make me say, oh, cool. You know, maybe the concept doesn't work very well, but at least they're trying. Yep. So something neat and out of the box. That's, to me, a high concept idea.
Yeah. Any specific examples of you?
You had mentioned that we could talk about some films or something. Is this when you wanted me to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, you'd asked us come up with some movies or something like that. So in a nutshell, I basically wrote down the entire filmography of Christopher Nolan. For example, one of my favorite movies of all time is a Stanley Kubrick film called The Killing. and it's these guys are robbing a horse race. But the concept of the film is that it doesn't take place in chronological order, and I'm pretty sure it's the first film that was made that's not told in a chronological format. So that's a high concept, just in the fact of the filmmaking. So I would consider that to be something high concept as well. And then you got Interstellar with the time travel and things like that for Christopher Nolan. That's a high concept.
On the less good side, I think of the 1990s action movies as being high concept run amok. It was when they were saying, what if the bus would explode if it went under 50 miles an hour? What if a cop and a criminal cut off each other's faces and switched places? Everything was just a what if.
All right. That is an interesting way to look at it. Now, I know, Bisha, you mentioned that the Nolan filmography, and I've never I don't think of myself as a huge Nolan fan, but Memento and Interstellar are definitely, two that popped out to me. For me, it's about the structure of a film and kind of how a story's told. That's a big part of it, along with the sci-fi conceit being a big idea. So that's kind of how I approached it. And when I talk about the structure, one of the films that I always reference is, I love The Crying Game. It's one of my favorite movies because of the way this film is told, and it's not really, if you only saw it once, you may not pick up on it, but it's obviously famous for the reveal in the film.
Don't tell me I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
There's the spoilers for this 50-year-old film, and I know it's not 50 years, but
I will not spoil it other than to say they basically tell two movies, 45 minutes for the first half of the movie, and then the exact same story for the 45 minutes of the second half of the movie. And it's amazing the way it's structured. And people kind of miss that it's this IRA activist who's learning to think in a different way. And then when he's living as a civilian in England, he's kind of faced with the same choices and making different choices for how he's lived his whole life. So great movie and great high concept in terms of how it's structured. So that's kind of where I ended up with a lot of my picks. So, all right. Well, that's a lot of interesting, different ways to think about this topic. So now let's get into everyone's Prime Directive and see what that looks like for our first Voyager topic.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our Prime Directive.
Define Prime Directive.
All right, Adam. So after breaking down your high concept there, give us an idea of kind of how you approached your Prime Directive for compiling your list for Voyager.
I wasn't very original on this. I just took a page out of your book and I went with rewatchability. And I find it really hard to rate things on what is number one and what is number five. They all kind of blend together a little bit for me. So it's like choosing between your children. So.
Yeah. That's what we do here.
I ended up with slightly more than five. And so if there was a case where there was, sort of a tie in my mind, and one of them was something I thought was really likely to be picked by someone else, I maybe went with the other one, road less traveled by.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard not to do that. Try to think about, everyone's going to talk about this one. So, but you never know. But we did that with Data, and we ended up with No Measure of a Man on anybody's list, which is great. I love that. It makes it an interesting topic. All right. So how about you, Bisha?
So for me, when I went through, I just went through, I'm like, am I going to be able to figure out 5 high concept episodes? And so I went through the entire run and I wrote down 12 episodes. I just scanned it once and I'm like, okay, I don't need to go too deep into this here. So now how do I divide this out? And I basically picked out of those 12, I did pick my 5 favorites. So these are my personal 5 favorites out of them. And that really helped me to divide them because there are some really great high concept episodes of Voyager that are really just awful. And those are the ones that kind of made it onto my runners-up list.
All right, we'll be interested to hear some of those secondary system selections. So I'll start by just saying that for me, one of the reasons we're doing this episode, and I've always said this, is that I really think Voyager has the best sci-fi conceits of any Star Trek series. They've always just they take really big swings when at some of these ideas. Some work, some don't. But just coming up with huge, grand, epic stories, I love that. So when I put my initial list together, I was kind of thinking that way, but then I also was really focused on the unique storytelling structure and unique narrative there. So all my picks pretty much have a little bit of both of those things. All right, so before we introduce third Romaticon to help us go through the order of things, just a quick reminder again here. The breakdown of how we're going to do it is we'll each reveal our High-Concept Voyager episode, and then we'll give our 5-word summary and a hashtag, which is our TrekRanks staple here. And then we can talk a little bit about the episode and the elements that made it a high concept. So any questions, guys? All good?
All good.
All good.
All right. Third Romaticon, victory is life. Let's do this.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Okay, so we're going to throw straight to Adam, and then we'll do Brandon-Shea and then myself, and we'll roll through this. So Adam, what's your first pick for top 5 High-Concept Voyager episode?
Okay, High-Concept Voyager episode number 5. I went with Relativity. What if the crew had to travel into Voyager's history to stop a time traveler from blowing up the ship?
That is a high concept. So what's your 5 words and a hashtag?
Okay, so wow, I think my what if kind of maybe takes the place of the 5 words. My hashtag is wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
That's perfect.
And I chose it because it is maybe not the one you'd first think of, but it is so rewatchable. It has so many just very, very strange and perfect twists and turns.
I get the feeling I'm about to be drafted.
In exchange for leniency, Captain Braxton informed us of the precise moment he boarded Voyager to plant the weapon. We'll be sending you to stop him. Tell her.
Deck 4, Section 38. I'll stumble over a wounded crew member. That will be your chance to capture me.
Don't miss it, or we'll have to do this all over again.
Wait a minute, let me get this straight. I'm going back in time to stop Braxton. But you already have him.
And there's a third one in our brig. I arrested him earlier today. But don't worry. They'll all be reintegrated in time for the trial.
And 7.
Well, I assure you, when all this is over, there'll be just one 7 of 9.
All right, let's get started before my headache gets any worse.
Yeah, I could watch it 5 times in a row.
It's totally rewatchable. It's another 7 of 9 tour de force. And at the end, we're basically everyone's dropping dead. It's just like,
yeah. It's a Captain Janeway tour de force. It's a Captain Janeway tour de force too.
Yep, as well. It's 7 that drops dead, right? When she beams back and there's she's dead.
Yeah. In the 7 who we follow for the teaser in the first act of the show, she just ends up dropping dead on a transporter pad. So they go back to Voyager and they take her out of the timeline at a slightly different time so that they can have another one.
Yeah, I love that episode. I love that it links to Future's End and Captain Braxton. It's really, it's a clever story and totally rewatchable.
And I love seeing Voyager in dry dock. Back at Udon.
Oh yeah. Yes, that's a great reference. It was so good. And 7 in a regular uniform.
And personally, I don't know what's going on with the 29th century Starfleet, but they seem to basically live in the world of Minority Report, where they arrest Captain Braxton at the end before he's gone insane and done anything wrong. And in Future's End, they just come right out shooting. They're like, well, we're going to have to destroy you. No questions asked. So I feel like maybe the Federation is taking a turn into dystopia in the future, but it's all good as long as it's so entertaining.
Let's not think too hard about the 29th century Starfleet. That is an excellent point. Okay. Brandon-Shea, what's your number 5 pick?
Okay, so remember, these are my 5 favorites of this list. So I love these episodes.
Okay.
And again, I wasn't worried about duplicates or if somebody else is going to pick them because I think this is an honest list for me here. So
perfect.
So I'm going to start with my 5 words. My 5-word summary is epic sequel to obscure episode. Hashtag I'm melting. What a world. Season 5, episode 18, Course Oblivion.
Yes, that's a great 5 words and a hashtag.
This episode is just amazing. And I remember the first time I saw this, I was not expecting. Who would expect a sequel to Demon?
Yeah.
Like, that is just bizarre. And that's what I think makes this a high concept, is that you're following this other crew that thinks they're the real crew. You know, like they think they're them, and it's such a sad ending when it's so good.
The ending is amazing, where it's like, get it launched, not quite.
Yeah.
They're not quite gonna pick it up.
Have you ever thought, like, how many of the episodes that we watch could have been that other crew? You know, like, I don't know.
That I have never thought. No,
No.
I never considered that, but now I'm going to.
Yeah, I don't know, because I'm sure there was times when if they met somebody and they're like, "Oh man, we met you and you were terrible people," and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And it's like, maybe they met the other crew, or I don't know, something like that. But
that's fair. It was Demon was the end of season 4, so there was a little bit of a window there. Maybe the Live Fast and imposters were following their lead instead of the actual Voyager. Who knows? Hey, it's a high concept. Could be anything. All right.
Well, I just watched this one last night and I was blown away by it. So
it is the structure of it is amazing, as the slow reveal. It is a little tough on the rewatchability scale because of it's so dark and just nihilistic. It's something about it. It just makes me like not want to watch it because of that tragic ending. So, okay, my number 5 pick is, I'm starting to think this one's not going to get a lot of attention today. It is, I'm just going to say it and then do my 5 words. It's season 3 episode Unity. And my 5 words and a hashtag are Great Delta Quadrant Borg Introduction. Hashtag Our Thoughts Are One. I just found this episode to be super original and engaging. And the high concept part that I love about it is that it introduces the Borg, if you don't count the quick tease at the end of Blood Fever. It just introduces them in a pretty amazing and original way where they don't get, the writers don't get trapped into that Borg box, where ultimately they're, there's a lot of criticism for Voyager on that, a little too much Borg and getting out of every sticky wicket a little too easily. That's not me, by the way. I'm not criticizing him for that, but the way they introduce this with this, it's basically the Alpha Quadrant, Gilligan's Island, in the middle of the Delta Quadrant, with Romulans, Klingons, Cardassians, humans all working together on this planet. And I really love that, and I love the way they were still connected. And then I like the big question at the end here, where they basically want to link everybody on the planet, because their little pocket, their cooperative, they call it, is linked, but there's some people they're fighting that aren't linked, and they want to get everybody linked so they all live and work together in harmony. And I guess that's a good thing. But then as soon as Chakotay says, well, I don't want any part of that, they kind of force him to join them and then activate this link on the cube. So some big questions there of, power corrupting. And I really like that episode. I love the way they introduced the Borg to the Delta Quadrant in Voyager. Any thoughts, guys?
I was never a big fan of Unity myself, but I like what you're saying about it, and I think it's definitely can be considered a high concept episode for sure. Just the Borg episodes in general didn't work for me as well on Voyager as they did on Next Generation, but 7 and 9 was a great addition. But
for sure. I mean, and this is a little bit of a precursor to that, showing these individuals who are no longer connected to the collective.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I didn't really dig Unity at the time, but it's grown on me a lot as time has gone by. I think what I really wanted, it was, right after Star Trek First Contact, and what I really wanted was just a big Borg episode. I wanted Scorpion at the time. But looking back on it now, I feel like Voyager's best Borg episodes were the ones that weren't necessarily a head-on confrontation, that were more of, things like Survival Instinct and the entire arc with the Borg kids are kind of where you really got to explore the Borg in a much deeper way than Scorpion or Dark Frontier, where it was just a fight.
Yeah, no one's gonna. I mean, obviously, Scorpion and Dark Frontier are 2 great episodes, but when you talk about when you talk about Unity and Child's Play and survival instinct. I mean, the way that they introduce the Borg there, it's really creepy and different. And I love the mystery around this episode too, where Chakotay has no idea what's going on with these people and then realizes, oh, they're Borg. That's not good. All right. Round 4. Let's move on to our number 4 picks. Adam, what do you got?
Okay. What if dinosaurs evolved and left Earth and we met them out in space? Hashtag monkey trial. It's Distant Origin from season 3 at the very end. And let me just say, when this was coming out, I had a friend, a guy named Matt, who was a big Star Trek fan and was also a creationist. And I was sort of militant in my youth about issues like this.
Yeah.
And I would try to talk him out of it, but frankly, he was a much better debater than I was. And I would always just get frustrated. And this episode came out, and the next day at school, we just sort of exchanged a look and didn't say anything about it.
For millions of years, our people have believed that we were the first intelligent beings to evolve in this region of space. The first race. This assumption underlies everything that we hold dear. But that belief has been questioned in recent years, not only by the circles of science and philosophy, but by common people as well. Lying before you is proof of the distant origin theory. These remains demonstrate beyond doubt that we arose elsewhere in this galaxy, that we evolved on a faraway planet and traveled to this space millions of years ago, our true history lost.
A pile of bones. Impressive.
This pile of bones belonged to a being who died approximately 1 year ago, from a species found nowhere in known space. And yet, we share 47 genetic markers with this being. We are undoubtedly related to him. And I intend to prove to you that we evolved on the very same planet he did.
And that planet is the long-lost world of the distant origin theory.
Yes, that's exactly right. And to find that planet, our planet, we must find a living member of his kind.
So he just kind of buried it under the rug, did he?
Well, we didn't talk about it, and it was probably a good thing that we didn't, because our friendship survived another day.
You should have rubbed his face in it. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, this episode is just so powerful.
So good.
And it has a very unique structure where it follows the Voth scientists as they're trying to track down Voyager, tracking them down from the planet where they were marooned in Basics, and all the way through the places that they had been in season 3 until they finally catch up with them. And you don't even see Voyager until I believe midway through the second act, or maybe midway through the third.
Hashtag RIP Hogan. Oh, poor Hogan. It's a great episode. It always it's talk about high concept. It's the craziest idea, right? I mean, it's like literally part of Star Trek canon that dinosaurs were spacefaring. Mm-hmm. So that's literally part of our Earth's history in Star Trek lore. So it's that is a big idea, to say the least. All right, Bishay, what's your number 4?
Okay, so my 5-word summary is 7 searches for Borg God. Hashtag my directive is Omega.
Yes.
Season 4, episode 21, the Omega Directive.
Definitely on my short list.
This episode, when I first watched it, I was so obsessed with this episode. Like every login username I had for the next 10 years was Omega Directive for everything. I just loved this episode so much. And the idea that Starfleet would have another directive that would supersede the Prime Directive always fascinated me. And the idea of how it just shut the ship down, and then also having 7 of 9 being so fascinated with this molecule as perfection I think that's a really high concept, and it's a really great episode. And I just love this one.
This is Omega.
A molecule?
Not just any molecule. The most powerful substance known to exist. A single omega molecule contains the same energy as a warp core. In theory, a small chain of them could sustain a civilization. The molecule was first synthesized over 100 years ago by a Starfleet physicist named Cataract. I think he was hoping to develop an inexhaustible power source.
Or a weapon.
It's such a high concept that I've seen it 30 times. I still don't know what the hell's going on in that episode. It's like, it's amazing. And it's also got a huge scope in terms of some of the sets and that set piece where I can't remember the aliens when they're on that planet and those other aliens show up to try to grab the omega molecule. Really well done action sequence there. It's a phenomenal episode. Really underrated. Adam, any comments?
To be honest, this one never really stood out to me that much, and I absolutely do not mean to yuck your yum.
I've done this podcast. I'm going home.
Hashtag no wrong. No, that's the whole point. But that's great.
No, that's fine.
No wrong answers. Absolutely.
It was definitely on my short list. But sometimes, there's ones that just don't resonate. I mean, another one that's, well, we'll see if it comes up. I'm not going to say it. Okay, so then I'll move on to my number 4 pick, which is, I think somebody else might have this one. We'll see. It is, actually, I'll start with my 5 words and a hashtag is maybe shouldn't work, but does, hashtag Eternals, and it is the episode Muse from season 6, the end of season 6. And I can't say for sure. I think this is a pretty divisive episode. I think there's people who really dislike it. I love it. I love everything about the big kind of meta message and how the narrative, the Eternals, the struggling writer trying to impress his fans, and everything about it is just super meta. It's basically telling Voyager's story and Star Trek's story in a really big, weird setting on this planet where they're doing some Shakespeare and performing for this guy. And I love the ending with B'Elanna, where she beams out and makes the writer a hero. It just works really well for me. And Roxanne Dawson's performance is amazing in this episode. So one of my underrated favorites.
Hashtag we love Cutler.
Yes, we love Kelly Waymer. She's so beautiful and so good in this episode. And it's written by Joe Menosky, he's got a couple on my list, and he's definitely a high concept Trek writer. So
that's an understatement.
Yeah, to say the least. All right, let's how about round 3? This is the soup round. We'll move on to the soup round. Round 3. What do you got, Adam?
What if a giant spacefaring alien ate Voyager by showing the crew its fondest wish? Hashtag picture this.
That is a huge high concept episode. Love it.
So this episode is just enormously high concept, but the reasons that I love it are actually all the low concept reasons. I love the 7 of 9 and Naomi Wildman team up. Yep. I feel like every time they're on screen together, they're just so good. I love Morgan Shepherd playing the grouchy, grizzled Captain Ahab, space traveler who's hunting this monster. Just the idea is so good. It's fascinating to see the crew, to see the crew's desires and what that reveals about their character, what they're looking forward to about getting home. Just all around great episode.
Yeah, I agree. This is an awesome one. I think it's one that gets passed over quite a bit, but I really like this one. Like you said, Morgan Shepherd, his voice is just epic. I just love listening to him talk. Like, I don't know. I think he's an awesome actor. But the frustrating thing I think about Voyager is the one-word titles. Like they're so underwhelming that you forget all the time. Like, what episode are you talking about? Like when you said Muse just a minute ago, I'm like, which episode was that again? And it took me a while to remember. But Bliss as well. Like, it's such a bad title, but it's such a good episode.
Yeah, my first 3 picks are all one-word titles. I actually don't have an issue. There's actually a great meme out there where they have all I think it's the next gen titles renamed as Voyager episodes, and it's amazing. It's really clever because it's pretty accurate. Where there's I don't even know how to describe the Voyager style, but it's definitely different than other Trek in terms of their titles. So
I saw something similar too for the original series, and they're like, what would the city on the edge of forever be called if it was done with the other series in mind? And when they got to Voyager, it was just called City.
which is a great title.
You're absolutely right. There are so many. If you tell me the name of an episode of Next Gen or original series or Deep Space Nine, I just know immediately what it is. But if you say a Voyager episode or an Enterprise episode, it's just very frequently I have no idea from the title.
I will say I do not have that problem. That I've never thought of it in those terms, but they are different. That's for sure. So here's the full disclosure. Bliss is not one of my all-time favorite episodes. I have it ranked at like number 131. I'm never a big fan of kind of the mind control episodes. And although this one, I mean, the picture plan idea was pretty good, and I think Seven's an amazing character, and I think, like you said, her scenes with Naomi in these episodes are in this episode is really strong. I think, and she's the strength of it for me. So, but not one of my all-time favorites. But no wrong answers, of course. And I think I'm definitely the minority on that because most people love Bliss. So, what if we went to B. Shea's number 3 pick? What do you got?
My 5-word summary is 7 gets lost in space Facebook. Hashtag conspiracies for you and you. Conspiracies for everyone. Season 6, episode 9, The Voyager Conspiracy.
I love it. And that's what I was going to mention about a few picks ago.
Absolutely.
Because it's on my secondary systems. I didn't pick it, but I love this episode. You have no idea where it's going. I love the flashback to the caretaker stuff and the way she processes everything. So why'd you pick it, Piche? It's an awesome choice.
It's interesting because it's so far into the run of the show, and when the episode starts, it's so convincing, and the data that she has, that 7 to 9 has on, on these conspiracies is so fascinating, especially when there's both of them there. I love this episode and I really enjoy it, even though for me, the back half of the episode really falls apart. It's still, I think, a great episode. And it's just the idea of, we know these characters so well by this point. Could there be more to the story? Could there be a conspiracy here going on? And it's so well done, I think. And that's what makes it a high concept for me.
Totally agree. They do a great job of making you start thinking, oh, yeah, maybe there was a tricobalt explosive that was secretly launched into the caretaker. It's really, really, it just bobs and weaves in every direction. I love that about it. It's a really clever episode. And you're probably right about the ending. It's probably why it's not, amongst everyone's favorites, but super strong. It's super rewatchable. Adam?
I totally agree. I think the ending, they're a little doomed with the ending because, there's never any doubt in your mind that it's not true, but the conspiracy isn't real. But it's just so fascinating to see everything recontextualized that way. Voyager, a lot of these high concept episodes on Voyager would really tiptoe right up to the line of kind of doing something that breaks continuity with the other episodes. And you almost felt like this one could. You almost felt like just this week it's true. And then next week it would just be erased. They wouldn't mention it again.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it. It does feel like there's just enough that maybe it's true. I love it. Okay, how about we close out round 3, the soup round, with another one-word title. And my 5 words and a hashtag is incredible deep dive into psychopath psyche, hashtag no reason. And it is Meld from Voyager Season 2. And I knew right away. Yeah, I knew right away this one was going to be on my list. It's an amazing story. It's actually got some top-notch Trek royalty behind it with Michael Piller and did the teleplay, and Mike Sussman. I think it's his first ever sail for Voyager. And when you think about Star Trek, did a story about how one crew member just brutally kills another one for no reason. That I love that concept, not because of the dark twist of it. I just love that it's totally original. And the way it unfolds, you think maybe it's going to be a murder mystery, but it's not, because Tuvok solves it right away. And it becomes a little bit of the kind of a nature versus nurture conversation, a little bit about mental health. And I just love that the producers had the guts to tell a story like that.
No, there's no point in denying it anymore. I used a 2-kilo coil spanner. He was sitting at the impulse system control panel. Didn't even look up when I moved in behind him, and I swung the spanner as hard as I could.
Crewman, I suggest you speak to counsel.
There was practically no blood. I was surprised at that. I figured that the EPS conduit was the easiest way to dispose of the body, but I must have damaged one of the circuits when I put him inside. Oh. I hid the spanner behind a comm line access panel on Deck 7.
Why did you kill him, Mr. Suter?
No reason.
That is not a satisfactory answer. You must have had some motive.
I didn't like the way he looked at me.
Absolutely. That's what I like about it the most as well, is that you think it's going to be a murder mystery and it's solved in the first act. Yep. So it just completely alternates your perspective on what this episode's going to be, and it's so well done. And I was honored that I actually had a chance to talk with Michael Sussman for my podcast Warp 5.
Yep, I remember that. It's a great interview.
We got to talk to him about it, and he talked about working with Michael Piller on this episode, and he's got some really good stories. So if you want to check that out, that's episode 113 called Pick Up His Own Dead Body. It's
a great interview with Mike Sussman. They also talk about In a Mirror Darkly and some of the stuff there. But it's also crazy to me that they were able to they basically took this Lon Suter character and bring him back in basics, so you have some closure for him. And then there's also the whole Vulcan mind meld aspect of the story with the influence on Tuvok. So really high freaking concept for me.
Brad Dourif is so amazing in this episode. He just plays this character just absolutely perfectly. Like just a little bit. If it had been more, it would have been just a little bit too much. But it was just amazing. So understated.
A phenomenal actor. One of the best in the world, literally. Whether it's Deadwood or Cuckoo's Nest, anything he's in, everything he touches, the guy's a genius.
Awesome in Deadwood, yeah. See, when I first watched this episode, when it first aired, I was kind of frustrated with it because they got Brad Dourif, because I was a huge X-Files fan, and they got him for a really good episode of the X-Files where he basically played the same kind of a character. And I'm like, well, they only got him because of that. And, it took a few rewatches before I really started to appreciate this episode.
That was what I mainly knew him for that episode of the X-Files, Beyond the Sea.
Yeah, Beyond the Sea, yeah.
At the time. But, later on I saw him in Lord of the Rings, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, of course, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, of course I remember that the X-Files. I never made that correlation like you did, B-Shay, but I get it. So, but that's the thing about the beauty of Trek is the long life of Trek. So if you're watching it when it airs for the first time in 96 or 97, maybe, but when you're watching it now, it's not really a factor. All right, let's move on to the second round, our round 2 picks. And Adam, what's your number 2 pick?
Okay, so for my number 2 pick, I'm going back to Voyager Season 3 again. What if Kes lived her entire life in reverse? Hashtag the Curious Kes of Benjamin Button. It's before and after. This... For a long time, I would have said that this was my favorite Voyager episode of them all. Wow. It's an amazing concept. Just to see her go through that, to see the acting performance that was turned in by Jennifer Lean, who, frequently didn't have that much to do on Voyager, but when she did, when it was Warlord or Coldfire or this, her performance was great. And the reason why it's particularly special to me is that it's not only a look at an alternate future of Voyager in universe, it's sort of a look at an alternate future of Voyager in a more meta way, because of course she was just about to leave the show, and in this episode we kind of got to see what it would be like if she had been there for all of those other years of the series. I mean, she was a character who was designed to be barely more than a child in the first episode and age to old age over the course of the series, which is an amazing high concept in and of itself. And we never got to see that realized. You know, they decided to go a different direction, and I think that's just amazingly unfortunate.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about the meta level of that, of seeing the future with her, knowing that she was going to be leaving the show.
Well, and of course we didn't at the time, but you know, it came to mean that.
Yeah, but wasn't it late in season 3? Didn't we kind of know at that point? I can't remember. Probably not.
I know that I didn't know at the time. It was definitely towards the end of season 3. I want to say it was in. Yeah. I didn't look up the episode numbers, but I think it was probably between 15 and 20.
And one of the things I like about it too is another high concept. It was very late season 3, almost the end. I'm sure it was episode.
I'll check it while we're talking here.
Actually, I can do it right now. It was 21 episode. Yeah. So I like the Chronoton. I can't remember what it was specifically called, but knowing that that Chronoton torpedo from the Krenim, that they actually saw that in this episode, and then that became a big part of Year of Hell in the 4th season, was fascinating to me. The way that they combine those two things, very high concept.
Year of Hell was massively foreshadowed here.
Yep, really, really cool. And you know that guys, like, I'm not sure if it was written by Braga, but definitely one of those where he was thinking ahead on it for sure. I had always had one slight critique of this episode was I wish it had been called After and Before. I just think that would have made more sense and it would have been a little more original. But hey, here we are talking about Voyager titles again.
Yeah, I think we're lucky it wasn't just called After.
Yeah.
Before. Yeah. I think this is a great episode and a great choice. This is definitely a very, very high concept episode for sure. The ending frustrates me, but it's a great episode. Like, it's so cool. Like, I don't know, just when she goes back to like her cells and then like redivides and gets born again, I'm just like, what is going on here? What is this?
High concept. It's funny, this was not on my long list. As soon as you said it, I was like, wow, how did that escape me somehow? But that's what happens on Trek Ranks. It's not easy to rank Trek. All right, Bishay, what's your number 2 pick?
Okay, so my 5-word summary is depressed Janeway recharges kick-ass batteries. # taking out the garbage. Yes. Season 5, episode 1, Night.
The freighter is moving to combat the aliens.
They're trying to distract the Malon, give us the upper hand.
10 seconds! The freighter's shields are weakening.
Target their cargo hold. Time to take out the garbage.
For me, the high concept in this is the idea of this giant area of space that they've got to go through with nothing. I think that's really fascinating. And honestly, I really wish we could have seen like a mini arc of them going through this area of space. But then the idea of there's these people that live in this area that's dark, and they've evolved in this area that's dark, and we got this other race of aliens dumping garbage in there because it's a perfect place to dump garbage. You know, there's nothing there. So I think there's a lot of really good ideas in this. I like the Malon a lot. Like the Malon and the Vidians are my favorite villains on Voyager, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think this is a really cool concept of having a giant area of nothing.
It's an incredible episode. It's so underrated in terms of Voyager's overall series. And the other high concept part of here is Janeway struggling with depression, and the story structure with the way the slow burn and the moodiness of how this one's produced and filmed with Captain Proton and everyone just kind of getting on each other's nerves. Really, really big high concept episode. Just totally original. Let's put it this way. when this episode aired, you had never seen anything like it on Star Trek. That is for sure. It stands alone in that regard.
You know, I think that probably season 5 and season 6 of Voyager were the heyday of the Voyager High-Concept episodes. And so this was the first, I mean, this wasn't the first, obviously, but this was the beginning of a kind of a new direction for the show. And I remember I was not picking up what they were throwing down at the time. I did not care for this the first time I watched it. And I was honestly kind of drifting away from Voyager a bit at this point. And so a few years ago, I went back and I said, you know, I know season 1 through 4 pretty well. I think I'm going to do a rewatch, but I'm just going to start it on season 5. And I watched this episode and I was so blown away.
Yeah.
Just amazing episode, and it just sets the tone for for some of the episodes that are going to follow it in season 5.
Do you think that it might have been because like this was the first season that didn't end on a cliffhanger, start with the cliffhanger, right?
But they played that in this episode. That's part of the reason. I mean, I think the way the moodiness of not just jumping into some big action arc was I think that was by design at the end of season 4, but certainly at the beginning of season 5, that had to be by design to have that muted feeling. It's so visual, it's so visceral.
Yeah.
And I love that, season 4 doesn't have that cliffhanger, and then season 5 starts and it feels like there was a cliffhanger and you just missed it. You're just right in the middle of the story.
Yeah, you do come right in the middle and feel like it's surrounding you. I mean, you feel it when you're watching this episode. I could talk about night all night.
All night.
That's not funny.
Well, when my wife and I went through, and my wife watched Voyager for the first time with me, and we got to the season 4 finale, Hope and Fear there, and I said, this isn't a cliffhanger. She didn't believe me. She thought I was trying to because basically every other season finale had been a cliffhanger, right? For every other Star Trek series. I mean, as they go along. And so when it ended and she was over, she's like, well, that wasn't the season finale. And I'm like, yeah, it was the season finale. It's done.
That is funny. I love it. And I could see her totally being fooled. All right, let's close out round 2. So my number 2 pick is my 5 words and a hashtag is extremely freaky, scary, twisty episode. Hashtag literally gives me a headache. It is Scientific Method from Voyager season 4. I actually find this episode very difficult to watch, but I really respect it, and I think it's an amazing high concept in that it's just the weirdest idea. These aliens who are slightly out of phase or conducting experiments on the crew while they're just walking around and they have no idea what's happened to them. It's so creepy. The production values are so high. And I mean, unlike an episode like Schisms, where I think a similar premise fails on Next Gen, they just have this beautiful structure of this episode where it begins as a mystery and there's a few clues being dropped about something going on. And then there's this really weird reveal about the barcode on, I think it's Chakotay's DNA that they find when Chakotay's like aging for no reason. I just love that whole setup. You literally have no idea what's going on. Oh, then the Doctor and B'Elanna kind of start figuring it out, and they both get attacked, but you don't know why or how. Just really expertly done. Great structure, huge idea. And then the payoff is when Seven's walking around and sees all these experiments going on in the crew, and the one on Janeway, I mean, to this day it still haunts my dreams. It's just her performance dealing with those. I mean, when you see the needles in her head, you're just like, oh my god, you can feel it because of the way she's been acting for the first 3 acts. It's just brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't put this one on my list. And the reason why is because of the title. Whenever I love this episode, and every time I see it, I always think it's that one where I always think it's concerning flight with Da Vinci. So I always get this one confused with the Da Vinci episode because of the title. But you're right.
That's
and I mean,
too funny.
It's not only is it spooky, but I mean, like, there's some comedy in it too. Like when Chakotay is comparing himself with with
with him and Neelix.
Neelix. He's like,
Yeah,
I can barely pick up this glass, and he's like, I can't look at the light, and I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting scene. It's a little bit of an outlier scene because they are two old men complaining about their ailments. Any thoughts, Adam, before we move on?
Just that I love this one. It is, I think the Next Generation episode Schisms is a lot of people's favorite, and I think Scientific Method just does that, but it's kind of better.
Yeah, it's way better in my book. Schisms, just the execution's not there in terms of the way this is. This episode is mild.
Schism scares me more than this episode. Schism freaks the crap.
What? No, Schisms Schisms makes me laugh almost. It's that's funny. It's interesting.
And I've got to say, I love any episode where Captain Janeway gets to be a badass, and this one definitely counts.
It's so great when for me, that's a really believable scenario where she's just like, all right, I'm flying this ship straight. You want to run an experiment? Here's an experiment. I'm taking this ship straight through these two suns or pulsars, whatever it was. Really, really great. The clicking's creepy, but needles in Janeway's head supersedes clicking. All right, let's go to round one. Adam, what's your number one pick, buddy?
Okay, my number one pick is actually my very favorite episode of Voyager. So I was shocked to hear Jim refer to it earlier as controversial. What if Voyager was Greek theater? Hashtag Shining Voyager Far From Home. It's Muse.
Yes.
This episode, in my book, this is, and I purposely didn't say anything about it when you brought it up, but this is Voyager's Darmok, in my opinion. I just love this episode. I love the concept of it. I'm a huge fan of theater. I'm a huge fan of Greek theater. I love the idea of the poet, this Shakespeare-like character, trying to change the world with words, and B'Elanna helping him do that. Admittedly, the Prime Directive kind of went out the window in this episode, but the message about peace, about changing the world by talking instead of fighting, is just so quintessentially Star Trek to me. The execution is amazing. I enjoy the characters. I just love everything that it says about Star Trek.
Captain's log, stardate 53896. B'Elanna Torres has requested permission to take the Delta Flyer and search for dilithium. Shining Voyager, far from home, far from the gleaming cities of Earth.
Headstrong B'Elanna Torres and young Harry Kim speed away from Voyager on the Delta Flyer in search of their treasures. She told me her story. And now I've told you.
So yeah, I agree, and I've always we've talked about this on Twitter before. So I did have in the back of my head, I thought, well, he might pick Muse, and I always knew it was going to be on my list. For me, it's so beautifully crafted. It's just incredible and super believable. But I do think there's people out there it doesn't resonate with so much. But I said it before, I'll say it again really quick. The meta narrative of this episode is amazing to me, where they're telling Voyager story, and they're also telling Star Trek story in terms of dealing with fans and dealing with that kind of side of it. I think it's really clever.
I also think it's really clever just on a structural level, where they'll show a scene in the theater with Janeway and Chakotay, kissing in the play, and then it'll cut straight to Voyager after that, and you'll see Janeway and Chakotay, and they do that. They do that. They show you Tuvok on Voyager, and then they go to Tuvok in the play, and the juxtaposition, cutting back and forth between the theatrical version and the actual crew is just amazing. Just very well done.
Yeah, Bisha, any last comments on Muse?
It's better than Alliances.
Hey, I like Alliances.
I do too. I love Alliances.
Alliances is my least favorite Voyager episode. It's like, how many episodes of Voyager are there? 172?
You trabe.
Alliances is like 178 on my list.
All right, well then let's hear your number one in terms of top 5 high-concept Voyager episodes. What do you got?
I think we might have a duplicate here with you and me for our number one, so we'll find out. My 5-word summary is double Voyager equals double disaster. Hashtag weird as part of the job. Season 2, episode 21, Deadlock. This is my favorite episode of Voyager, hands down. My number one. And I just watching this episode every time, I'm just like, what is going on? But the first time that I watched it was the best, of course. But 2 ships splitting everything except for the antimatter, and how everything just gets duplicated, and you think it's going to be the one ship that gets destroyed, but it's the other one. And you got the Vidians, who are a great villain that you forget about, right? Because they just mention them at the beginning and then they don't come back again until the end because there's so much other disaster going on. And it's got the greatest teaser in all of Voyager because it's like almost 8 minutes long, and you get to meet everybody. Like, everybody is in the teaser. And I just love this episode so much. It's my favorite Voyager episode.
Captain, I think you should return to your ship and run a metallurgical analysis. Find out the precise phase modulation of your hull. I'll do the same here. Maybe we can find a way to realign the phase displacement. You're going to self-destruct your ship. What makes you say that? Because that's what I would do if your Voyager were intact, and my Voyager were crippled, my crew wounded or dead. I'd sacrifice my ship so that yours could survive. And I'm glad we agree. Go back to your ship. I didn't say I agree, I said I understand. I'm not willing to let you make that sacrifice yet. We haven't explored all the options. Yes, we have, and we both know it. This is my ship and my decision. Captain, I'm not going to let I've made my decision. Please don't make me call security and have you escorted off my ship because... you know I'll do it.
And we have a new Harry Kim and a new Naomi Wildman.
No, we don't. And that's the thing. We don't have a new one. So that's the thing about it is that, see, twins, right? Identical twins are split at one point, right? But up until the point that they split, they're the same thing. They're just one thing. So there's maybe 42 minutes of different life. So it's not, I don't know, it's not a new Harry Kim.
Yeah, but now there's 2 of them, and one is dead, and
one is dead.
And the separate one. No, it's so this is not my number one. I love this.
Okay.
This was literally my number 6. It was hard to leave off my list. I love Deadlock. It's literally one of the all-time great science fiction conceits. The first 15 minutes of Deadlock is perfect science fiction. You can't do it better than that. It's absolutely incredible. And really the last 30 minutes is pretty damn close too. It's phenomenal. How about you, Adam? What do you think?
Oh, I love this one. When I spoke earlier about that I would pick the most rewatchable ones, but if there was a tie, I would go with maybe what wasn't as common. This was one of the episodes that I left off the list on purpose because I just knew someone else would take it, and I would get to say how much I loved it.
Totally fair.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, it drops you right in the middle of just a situation where, there's a disaster going on, you're on the edge of your seat, and then holy tamale, Harry Kim's dead. The conflict that it sets up between the 2 ships is fantastic. And then there's just this shot, which I still remember. It's sort of akin to the Star Destroyer at the beginning of Star Wars, where the Vidian ship starts to glide into the picture, and you just realize that turned it up a notch. It's just such an exciting episode.
And the switch at the end is I mean, nowadays you'd claim to see it coming, but at the time, boy, I did not see it coming. All of a sudden,
neither did I.
They're leaving with the destroyed ship. That's
anybody who claims they saw it coming is
I didn't see it coming. That is for sure. It's an all-time classic sci-fi conceit. It's why Voyager is awesome. And I always argue that with people that we just listed 13 or 14 episodes here with just amazing science fiction concepts. Just phenomenal. What was your last comment there?
The part that throws that one over the top, though, is the fact that they kill the baby. Like,
Yeah,
when you as like the first time you're watching this, you're just like, what is going on?
Can you imagine? Go to the other ship. Can you grab their baby? Bring it over. That would be. We'd really appreciate that.
Hashtag don't forget the baby.
I love it. All right, so my number one is also my all-time number one favorite Voyager episode, which you can find on TrekRanks.com. And my top five, my 5 words in a hashtag is Weird Planet Displaced in Time. Hashtag Ground Shaker Lightbringers. I am totally team Blink of an Eye. I just love this episode. I adore it. It's my unequivocal number one. I just heard Bishay sigh. I hope that doesn't mean
No. I was
okay.
laughing.
Yeah. All right.
Good.
It's. I mean, for me, everything about it works. The structure, I love the technobabble science that explains everything. I love the pacing of how it just unfolds with these little glimpses into the culture on the planet and how it's being affected by Voyager. And then, you got Daniel Day Kim is in this episode at the early parts of his career. And for me, the scene that kind of starts sending it to a new level for me is when these 2 astronomers are studying the ship and just kind of talking casually about the skyship friends. And you just start to get the massive scope of this episode and start thinking that they're going to see these, this race kind of surpass them. I love that, the way they ended at the end, where basically the planet, is first attacking Voyager, and then they surpass them and save them. And you got the Doctor's Away mission is really fascinating and clever, where he's on the planet for 2 minutes, and it's 3 years. Just really, really clever execution. I love this episode.
And don't forget, the Doctor had a child.
Yeah, I'm assuming he was adopted, but who knows? Who knows?
Launch control, please respond.
Who is this?
Pilot First Rank Katana Retz.
Clear this channel or I'm going to report you to the command center.
Is this launch control?
I'm the weather coordinator for Station 004. You're in violation of transmission regulations.
Please, listen to me. I'm trying to reach launch control.
Let me guess, you finally decided to come home. You're Katana Retz?
Katana Retz, yes. Now please transfer me to launch control.
Launch control became the tactical command center 50 years ago. You're dead.
I've been inside the skyship.
Then it's a good thing you decided to leave. They're about to shoot it down.
I've got to speak with them.
Tactical command frequencies are classified. Now get off this channel.
If you've ever wanted to report more than the weather, now is your chance. Tell them to clear Central Lake of all traffic. Orbital 1 is coming in for a landing.
Yeah, huge heart and huge sci-fi concept and huge structure. So my all-time favorite Voyager episode. What? Any comments there, Adam, Bishay?
Yeah, absolutely great. I had a short list of. I'm actually looking at my short list where I wrote down 20 episodes that might fit the topic. And next to Blink of an Eye, there's a note which says, Jim will pick this.
Yes, for sure. Not even a question. All right, well, let's jump in then on your secondary systems. What else do you have on your list there, Adam?
Oh, wait, did Bishay get to talk about Blink of an Eye?
Oh, did you have anything more to add?
No, it's fantastic. It's a really neat idea of this time displacement. And I think it does work very well. And that's what I love about Voyagers. I think they really pushed the box, they pushed the edges of the box to try and come up with really unique ideas. No other series did something quite like this. Like, look at these 15 episodes, 14 episodes we've just named. They really, really did take high concept to another level, I think.
Yeah, and let me just full disclosure, if there was a skyship in Earth's orbit, I would totally have all the skyship friends collectibles. So no question. All right, Adam, what's on your secondary systems?
Okay, well, as I said, I had 20, so I'm only going to mention a few of them.
Yep.
You guys named Blink of an Eye, Deadlock, Course Oblivion. They were all on there.
Yeah.
Living Witness was on there.
Yes, that's on mine.
I'm shocked that no one picked it. Nemesis was one of my
I love that episode
favorites.
so much.
So amazing.
Yep.
Talk about a twist at the end. Faces from all the way back in season 1.
Oh, interesting.
Where B'Elanna gets split into 2 halves. Loved that one. Tuvix. How did we not pick
Yeah, Tuvix is not on my short list. What's going on? Well, it's a transporter accident, so it's not. Yeah, maybe the transporter accident part, I think, is what kept it off my list. But any others?
Just 2 more. Shattered.
Yeah, that was on mine. Yep.
And an episode that is undeniably high concept, but almost universally reviled. Although Bichet apparently likes it more than Alliances. Threshold.
Yeah, that was not on my list.
I definitely do like it more than I like Alliances.
That is funny. Someday we'll hear all about your dislike of Alliances. All right, what else is on what's on any others that you want to list off there, Bichet?
Yeah, actually, there was only one that I came up with an actual hashtag and everything for, so I'll do that one.
Let's do it.
I'll do that one last year. So I put 30 Days on there because the idea of the water planet I thought was really cool.
I love that.
Scorpion 1 and 2 because of fluidic space I thought was really cool, but it wasn't big enough for me to put on the list.
Yep.
I also had Shattered. I had Tuvix as well, and I put The Thaw. I'm surprised nobody picked that one, but I think that's a really high concept episode. I like that episode a lot.
That was on my list as well.
Yeah, and I also picked The Void just because of this idea that the Federation is the way. I like that a lot. But the one that I actually did a hashtag in summary is my 5-word summary is, what did I just watch? Hashtag Crazy Grandpa. Season 5, episode 9, The Fight.
Oh no!
And I had to put it. It's a high concept.
No, I don't even. No.
It is an absolutely high concept episode, but it was not on my list because it is just terrible.
Again, apparently better than Alliances.
Yeah, better than Alliances, that's for sure, yeah.
Somehow he hates the Trabe that much. All right, so I had a couple that weren't listed so far. I thought One Small Step, really, just because I love the graviton ellipse. I love that idea for how to bring the Ares 4 and Lieutenant John Kelly into Voyager's purview. Love that
as well.
One of my all-time favorites. I like Blood Fever because you have Pon farr in a Klingon, and that's a really, really original, big idea. So and it's just a great and exciting episode. I love Gravity. I didn't pick Gravity because it's pretty. Then I would have had two time displacement episodes. That might be a little overkill, but I'm a big fan of Gravity. And then Worst Case Scenario was one because for me it's a really brilliant storytelling structure to figure out a way to bring Seska back and have everybody kind of experience an alternate storytelling mechanism with Seska in the holodeck. So, and then she turns the tables on him because she rewrites the program. Pretty clever. So yeah, again, I say it a lot. Voyager's sci-fi conceits are off the charts. They are really, really strong. All right, so with that, I think we can wrap up this Voyager deep dive, and let's join 7 as we activate our regeneration cycle.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Okay, so I always like to have a little quick recap, so we just run down the picks really quick. So, Adam, what were your 5 picks? And we'll run through some stats too. There's some interesting numbers here.
Okay, number 5 was Relativity. Number 4, Distant Origin. Number 3, Bliss. Number 2, Before and After. And number 1, my all-time favorite Voyager episode, Muse.
I love that we all had our number 1 Voyager episode at number 1. That says a lot about Voyager and its high concepts. All right, Bichet, run down your 5.
My 5th choice was Course Oblivion. Number 4, The Omega Directive. Number 3, The Voyager Conspiracy. Number 2, Night. And number 1, Deadlock.
Spectacular. My 5 were Unity, and then Muse, Adam's number 1, and then Meld from early in Voyager's run. And Scientific Method was my number 2, and Blink of an Eye was my number 1. All right, let's break down some quick stats here. We only had 1 duplicate, which is really cool, and that was the episode Muse between Adam and myself. The season breakdown was pretty even. It was 2 season 2s, 3 in season 3, so a couple of early picks, 2 season 4, and then 4 each from season 5 and season 6. So Voyager going big as it was closing out there. And then I started keeping this stat as we were going because it became a topic of discussion. There were 8 one-word titles in our 15 picks. There were 5 two-word titles and 1 3-word title and 1 4-word title. So pretty funny breakdown on Voyager's naming mechanisms for their episodes. I love it. All right, guys. Anyone feeling like they have deja vu, or as Worf would say, Nipa? Because guess what? We've re-entered our temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
All right, so last week, and guys, chime in here as we go through this. Jeff and I, we did our top 5 data episodes, or a couple weeks ago, with Matt Hansen and Andy from Women at Warp. Feels like ages ago. The feedback was almost unilateral consensus on some of the big episodes. So you had like Offspring, Measure of a Man, Data's Day, Most Toys, Brothers, Generations, First Contact. Those were kind of the big picks. So I'm going to change it up a little bit here. Instead of listing one list, I'm going to highlight a couple of deep cut choices from a few different listeners. And first up, we have Robert Reyes and Star Trek London. I think they were the only 2 to include Birthright, which was a great pick. I love that exploration of Data's psyche with Dr. Soong. I think that's an underrated episode, even if there's no Data or Soong in Birthright Part 2. But love that breakdown. Simon Foster, who is at FunkySci1701 on Twitter, he was the only one to pick Deja Q, which I thought was interesting. And Andy had Deja Q on her list. And Trekkie Rick, a.k.a. at Nerd Rick, he had an awesome list. And not just because it included 2 of my deep cut picks, Redemption and Gambit, but we were definitely on the same Positronic network for our choices. And then Trekkie Rob also agreed with me on Hero Worship. So I love that I was not completely alone and on an island there. And then finally, 1 submission each for 2 very similar Data episodes, The Ensigns of Command and Thine Own Self. The Ensigns of Command was picked by Carl Wonders, and Thine Own Self, an underrated gem, was a choice of Mr. Brandon-Shea Mutala. Thank you, Brandon, for helping us get out of this temporal causality loop, because that was a great pick.
I love that episode.
I do too. It's really, really underrated. It's got a lot of heart. I really love that little girl. Can't remember her name, but excellent portrayal, and you just feel for, just want to hang out with them. It's I agree. It's a great season 7 episode. All right. So as always, thanks everyone for all the amazing responses to our first few episodes. Keep the list coming to me at TrekRanks so we can add them to our database numbers and we can retweet them. And also, we want to hear from you. So please put together your list of top 5 high-concept Voyager episodes and give us a call. Tell us your list. It's easy. Call us at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP. And hopefully we'll hear from you and get you on the next episode of Trek Ranks. And speaking of the next episode of Trek Ranks, we have a couple of special topics planned for our episodes coming up in September, because we know what's happening in September 2017. Star Trek is returning to television. What? I could not be more excited. Yes, I know.
No way. So excited.
All so excited. Star Trek Discovery is coming up. So with that in mind, we're going to make September Star Trek Discovery Month here at Trek Ranks. We're going to have a couple of awesome Discovery topics. One is going to be Klingon-centric, probably our top 5 Klingon episodes. And we're also going to do epic arcs. We're going to do epic arcs to get ready for this new age of Star Trek storytelling, with basically what's being described as one long 15-episode movie in terms of this Discovery first season. So those are going to be the 2 episodes coming up in September. We'll get you more details on those drop dates and airing order, but really excited about getting on those 2. Any quick thoughts from any of you guys on epic arcs or top Klingon episodes?
Well, you got to have the Circle in there for an epic arc. That's for sure.
Ooh.
The Circle trilogy.
So the not to cut you off, I wanted to keep going, but the beauty of epic art, it could be anything. It could be as big as you want it to be, or as small. So you can literally say, "Well, I'm doing the whole Zindi arc," or you can say, "I'm doing just the Circle trilogy," or "I'm doing Lon Suitor," or something like that. I'm really curious to see where this one goes.
I got another one you could do. You could do the top 5 Harry Mudd episodes.
Actually, there'll probably be more than 5 in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months.
In honor of T-Shea, I'm going to say my epic arc would be the Michael Jonas series of episodes on Voyager when he's betraying the ship. Betraying the ship. Beginning, of course, with Alliance.
I'm actually considering that one, and I'm not making that up. They actually did a great job with that in season 2. It's really a great story thread, which begins with Alliance. A great episode. Let's see where Alliance is on TrekRanks. Just to number 47. I love it. The trade for complete a-holes. # just saying. So Alliances. I actually like Alliances. I think it works pretty good. We'll talk about it later. Shay. All right. So before we wrap it up here, huge thanks.
Long live Threshold.
To the brilliant Adam Hunault and Brandon-Shea Mutala for bringing their D game tonight. And by D game, I totally mean Delta Quadrant. So everyone make sure to follow them at Twitter actually give us your Twitter handles again. At Adam Hunault.
Yeah, at Adam Hunault.
And at Brandon Mutala. You want to spell? Okay, perfect.
Mutala is Mutala.
Yes, the Mutala Nebula. Not quite. Almost. Tell me all your friends call you the Mutala Nebula. They need to.
The Mutala Nebula. I know there was somebody who said that. They're like, you should just change it to an R. And I'm like, I had to look at it for a long time, and I'm like, what? Oh,
you should have been living that your whole life.
I should have. You know, you want to know something funny though? I tell people I was born to be a Star Trek fan because my birth date is the 17th of January.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I tell everybody I was born to be a Star Trek fan.
My birthday is the 5th of April. First contact day.
This is amazing. You two guys. That is phenomenal. I cannot match. Actually, I can match that.
I'm going to be 81 that day, and I will see you all in Bozeman.
Oh, that's fantastic. I don't think I'm going to make it. But I will say that my birthday was actually the very first day that Klingons were on set being filmed for the episode The Errand of Mercy, the day I was born, actually. So I always like that fact. All right, so follow those guys on Twitter. Trust me, they are great at Twittering. Good job, guys. So, all right, just thanks again for everyone engaging with us here on episode 9 of the Trek Ranks. And as always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.